Ancient Rome was a civilization of contrasts. It was a place where emperors hosted feasts, inviting 8 men of only one type, bald, short, or fat. While gladiators fought to the death in the Colosseum, Roman women were forbidden to leave their homes unless accompanied by a male family member. And if a woman so much as looked at another woman lustfully, she could be put to death. This is ancient Rome, and this is what really happened here. The year is 62 AD. The people are gathered in the Forum. It's the center of Roman life. It's where politics and business is conducted, and it's also where gossip is traded like currency. But today there is no gossip more lurid than the story of a beautiful young woman named Poppaea Sabina. She is standing before the tribunal of the Pontifex, the highest court in all of Rome. Her crime: she was an adulteress. In Roman society, there was zero tolerance for women who slept around, and even the slightest accusation of impropriety could ruin a woman's life. In Poppaea's case, her husband had accused her of sleeping with a gladiator. The punishment for such a crime was usually the death penalty. But before the sentence was carried out, a show was made of the condemned woman. For Poppaea, this meant being paraded through the streets of Rome, naked except for a fillet over her private parts and a crown of flowers on her head. A garland that read Lekmich was hung around her neck. After this humiliation, she was dragged to the temple of Vesta, where the sacred fire was kept burning day and night by a group of priestesses. Here, Poppaea was burned to death. Her lifeless body was then cut into 4 pieces and scattered to the 4 winds. Such was the fate of the adulteress in Roman society. But Poppaea's case wasn't anything unique. There were other women in Rome who suffered terrible punishments for breaking the law or social norms. Today we will look at 6 women from Roman history who got too much of a taste of Roman justice. Let's begin. No. 6. Clodia Metelli. Not all women in ancient Rome were innocent maidens waiting to be married off. Some of them were warriors who lived life on their own terms. One such woman was Clodia Metelli, sister of Gaius and Publius, 2 powerful Roman statesmen. She was known throughout Rome as the divine or superb Clodia. Despite being married 3 times, she lived with her own pleasure. Her first husband, Quintus Hortensius, was so ashamed of his wife's promiscuity that he ended up taking his own life. The second, Titus Pomponius Atticus, was an older man who managed to control his wife to some extent, but when he died, Clodia went back to her old ways. She was involved in a number of scandalous affairs with both men and women. At one point, she even hosted her own gladiatorial games in the Roman Forum, and she was said to have trained female gladiators herself, which was unheard of in Roman society. Eventually, the Roman Emperor, Augustus, grew tired of her shenanigans and banished her from Rome. No record exists of how she spent her final days, but rumor has it that she took her own life. Number 5. Livia Drusilla. Livia Drusilla was the daughter of a Roman senator. As a teenager, she attracted the eye of the future Emperor Tiberius. He was so enamored with her that he sent his counselors to find her out. When they found her, they tried to persuade her to accept his proposal, but Livia wanted to marry the man of her choice. She turned down the offer and even cursed Tiberius, saying that if he forced her to become his wife, she would rather die. Well, Tiberius was a man who didn't take kindly to rejection. He ordered that Livia's father and brother be killed and brought before him with their heads severed from their bodies. Then he took Livia by force and made her his wife. But this didn't stop Livia from hating Tiberius. She never forgave him for murdering her family, and after giving birth to his son, she spent the next 25 years trying to destroy Tiberius. She poisoned him, plotted against him, and did everything she could to make his life miserable. Finally, when Tiberius came to know about her plots, he exiled her from the empire and confiscated all her property. Number 4. Julia Maesa. Julia Maesa was born into power. She was the daughter of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, so naturally she was destined for greatness. But Julia never really grew out of her teenage tantrums. Once she unleashed the full force of her wrath on Rome, she started throwing gold coins from her tower window, enjoying the sight of common folk fighting over the riches. But when one citizen, Lucius Sergius Cucciolini, collected more gold than the others, Julia decided to have him put to death, just because the emperor's daughter had a bone to pick with him. The senator Marcus Junius Brutus was outraged. How could Julia get away with murdering a Roman citizen? He demanded that the emperor's daughter be put on trial. Of course, Julia's uncle, the Emperor Augustus, wasn't going to let his niece be tried in public. If convicted, she could have been sentenced to death or exile. So Augustus did something unprecedented. He banished Brutus from Rome, confiscating all his property. And though Julia was never punished for her actions, the incident earned her a reputation that stuck with her for the rest of her life. From then on, she was known as the Amazon of Alexandria. No. 3. Tullia Minor. Tullia Minor was the daughter of the Roman Emperor Nero and his first wife Poppaea Sabina. She was born just 2 years before Poppaea's death, and the young princess grew up without a mother. It's not surprising that she became attached to her father's new wife, the former slave Statilia Messalina. But as the apple of Nero's eye, Tullia was used to getting everything she wanted. So when her father banned her from seeing Messalina, she sulked. Soon Tullia fell in love with a young man named Anicetus. The two lovers planned to elope, But before they could run away, Anicetus was killed in the Great Fire of Rome. Tullia was devastated, and she threw herself into her father's arms. But Nero was furious. He couldn't believe that his own daughter would dare to defy him by eloping with a commoner. So he chained her up and beat her to death. Number 2. Julia Agrippina. When Julia Agrippina was born, her father, the Emperor Augustus, proclaimed that the gods had granted him another son. You see, in Roman society, girls were considered inferior to boys, especially if they were born into the imperial family. Even her mother, Julia Misa, wished that Agrippina was a boy instead. So naturally, the poor girl grew up believing that she wasn't loved by anyone. To win her family's approval, she threw herself into her studies and soon became a renowned orator. She even wrote books on philosophy and history, but nobody paid any heed to her works. Her father died when she was 19, and her brother, Caligula, became the emperor. Though Caligula was a notorious womanizer, he never laid a finger on his sister. In fact, he doted on her. So when he died, Agrippina was inconsolable. But soon enough, her mother came up with a plan to get over the loss. She arranged for her daughter to marry her own uncle, the future Emperor Claudius. But while the marriage was a political success, it was a failure on a personal level. Julia hated her new husband, and she made no secret of it. Soon the couple was divorced, but Julia wasn't willing to accept the separation. She kidnapped Claudius's son from his wife's home and raised him as her own. When the emperor found out, he ordered that Julia be banished from Rome and forbidden from setting foot in the empire ever again. She died soon afterward. Number 1. Faustina Minor. Faustina Minor was born into privilege. Her father was the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, and her mother Faustina Sr. was one of the most beautiful women in Rome. Naturally, she grew up under the shadow of her mother's beauty. And when Faustina died, the pressure was on for the young girl to live up to her looks. But no matter what she did, Faustina Minor could never hope to be as beautiful as her mother. Desperate to be seen as beautiful, Faustina visited every spa and bathhouse in Rome, spending vast amounts of money to beautify herself. But nothing worked. Soon, the young princess developed another addiction. She became obsessed with gold jewelry and fine clothes. Every day she would wear different garments and drape herself in gold necklaces. But Faustina's addictions weren't limited to just bathing in jewelry. She liked to party hard. Every day she would visit taverns and brothels, drinking wine and having trysts with both men and women. She even hosted parties inviting 8 men of only 3 types: bald, short, or fat. When her father came to know about her debauchery, he chained her up and forbade her from leaving her chambers. But this only made Faustina more rebellious. One day she escaped from the palace and disappeared into the city. She was never seen again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.